under God,
with liberty and
indivisible,
justice for all.
liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, folks. Wanted to thank you all for wanting to join the Labor Committee. It's not for everybody, so I appreciate those wanting to come back and those who chose it, and even some who I've spoken to that didn't choose it, but are in the committee anyway. The schedule today is going to be, the first 30 minutes will be some general conversation with us as the members. There's a brief introduction, some information that I can provide to us. At 10:30, we'll have the Department of Employment Securities with Commissioner Kopatis and Lavers, followed at 11, followed at 11 o'clock.
Representative Infantine, you do need to read the script for the public meeting. Do you have that?
I did, but no, in my.
I will email it to you right now.
Please email it to, gosh almighty, please email it not to my representative one, but to my other email.
Your work.
Yes, please.
Okay. You'll just have to put your committee name in there. I apologize. That was the closest one I had.
My computer's now making sure that your attachment doesn't have a virus in it.
Gotta love technology.
Would you like me to read it from the top line as chair?
Yes, please.
Okay, folks, as chair of the House Labor Committee, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. This is a committee orientation meeting. Please note that there is no physical location for members of the public to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting. However, in accordance with the emergency order, I'm confirming that all members of the committee and select legislative staff have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through the Zoom electronic meeting platform. And the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in the meeting by Zoom platform or by telephone. All necessary access information has been made available to the House in the House calendar and through the electronic calendar on the General Court website. The notice for this meeting notice complies with the House and RSA 91-A. Anyone who has a problem accessing the email should call 271-3600 or email hcs@ledge.state.nh.us. That again is, if you have any problems, you should call 271-3600 or email hcs@ledge.state.nh.us. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. Christina Dyer, committee researcher, will be the staff assisting us. Please note that all votes that are taken during the meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, please also state whether there is anyone in the room with you during your meeting, which is required under the Right to Know law. We have the clerk call the roll.
Certainly.
Jonathan,
Chairman William Infantine, are you alone, etc.?
I'm here and I'm alone.
Brian Seaworth,
I'm here and I'm alone.
myself, I am here, I'm alone. Leno Avalani,
I'm at work and not alone.
John Callum, Herschel Nunez, Mark Warden,
I'm in my office by myself. I'm here.
Leonard Turcott,
I am here. My wife is at the other end of the building.
Andrew Prout,
I am here and I'm alone.
Stephen Boyd,
I am here and I am joined by my 2 Labrador retrievers.
Brian Sullivan,
Here in my home office alone.
Tim Suthi,
I'm here, and my daughter is in the kitchen, but we're leaving soon.
Benjamin Baruti,
I am here with my 4-legged friend who's been very boisterous this morning.
Michael Cahill,
I'm home in Newmarket. My wife is elsewhere in the building.
Linda Di Silvestro,
I am here. I am alone.
Jan Schmidt,
I am present. I am in my own office alone.
Dan Toomey, Donald Bouchard,
I'm here at home and alone.
Joshua Etchison.
Present and alone.
Okay. That's everyone accounted for, not here.
Thank you, Jonathan. Christina.
I am present in my home with my children in Derry. Thank you.
At this point, Christina, are we free to have general conversation?
Absolutely. You are streaming live on YouTube and everything is being recorded, so please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Again, thank you folks for joining. I apologize for being a little behind on some of the protocol. I did see Attorney Ogden from the Department of Labor has logged on. Attorney Ogden, we will not be needing you till 11 a.m., but you're welcome to either come back to the meeting at that point, or you can stay on through the meeting at this point. Just some brief introductions. Excuse me, of the schedule. I'd like to have a conversation with members so we can briefly introduce ourselves and ask any questions you have for the next 15 or 20 minutes. At that point, we'll be discussing our role and the role of the Department of Employment Securities with Commissioner Kapadas and Lavers. And then 30 minutes after that with Attorney Ogden, Assistant Commissioner of the Department of Labor. And then unless there's anything else, I'll let everyone go. There are some just brief announcements. As you know, if you have not had an opportunity to look, we have 16 pieces of legislation that our committee will be looking at this year. The way things are going to be handled as to how we meet is not going to necessarily be my choice. Because of the situation we have here with limited amount of Zoom meetings and individuals that can assist us, we are being told when our meetings are going to be. I have been informed that we are meeting next Thursday, the 28th, and then the following Thursday, the 4th. Those are the two scheduled meetings at this point. So I will quickly get together a list today so it can make the calendars that the bills we'll be looking at for those two dates. It is my hope that we can look at these 16 bills in 3 sessions and have the hearings. Leadership has expressed that when we do have a hearing date, they want us to meet the full day, not a half a day. So we will be meeting these 3 days will be long days for us. It is my intent not to, I don't like to do it. I don't like to exec any bill that has been heard the same day. We will have the ability, bills could be execed at any of the sessions, but I will not be doing anything the day a bill is heard. Don't like to do that. We're going to do our best here with Zoom, as you can see from the screen here. We are able to see each other. We will not be able to see people testifying. I don't have all of the rules. They have not been provided to me yet. I'm sure they will be provided to all of the representatives by the speaker shortly. But there's things that still need to be worked out. One of the reasons we will probably like to see the individual are testifying in front of us. We don't know if someone's going to do something off color inappropriately behind the scenes, which will be out there for everyone to see and be recorded. We hope that won't happen, but you never know. They still have to work on how we're going to be dealing with the cards that are being submitted to us, the red cards to call on folks, and how that's going to work. One of the questions that was given to me is, let's say, someone wants to testify in a bill and they happen to be in the legislative office building, but some people are not. How do they, come on with Zoom? If Representative Cahill is once he has a bill that's coming in front of our committee, will he be able to be in the LLB and be on this Zoom call and be able to submit his piece of legislation when others, possibly could not? And so how are all these things going to work out? And I'm sorry, folks, I just don't have the answers. We're going to do our best we can. I know there's some concern. Everyone wants to keep this fair. I've had a long conversation with Representative Sullivan on a number of issues and how things are going to work. And the goal is to make sure everybody is happy with what's going on. And we will do our best to make that happen. There's no intent here, Brian Stewart and myself, there's no intent here to, pull any fast ones and not do anything that's completely fair, that everyone has a chance of being completely heard and represented. One of the conversations we had with Representative Sullivan and I had to do with folks online versus in the LLB. I do plan to be in the LLB, but that's my choice. And I have no problem with anyone who does not want to be there. Will everyone be treated in the LLB testifying or being able to ask a question as a representative of the people testifying or the witnesses or whatever? Will they be given the same as people online? The answer is yes. No one's going to be singled out because of any of those things, but you're going to have to trust a little bit of Brian Seaworth and I, as well as your leader, Brian Sullivan. We're going to do the best we can to make sure that everyone is happy with what's going on and treated fairly. So we will do our best. Before I ask any questions, what I would like to do is I'm going to go around my screen just by how I see folks on the screen here. If you would take 30 seconds and introduce yourself, your name, where you're from, how long you've been in the committee, and anything you would like to add to the group. I would ask you to do one thing at the end of your little spiel, to tell me what is your best and worst day for you to attend committee sessions. So if that's okay, Again, I'm doing this in order of how I see folks on the screen, so I'm going to start with Representative Baruti.
You've got to unmute yourself.
And there you go. I was trying. Okay, thank you. I'm Ben Rudy. I think I'm in my 15th term now. Been on a labor committee for 10 out of those 15 terms. Know a little bit about what's going on. I'm from Manchester. I'm a realtor. And I think we got a couple Thursdays already planned, and it looks like those are the days that I have free right now, but it would help me to have the same day every week, whatever day you pick, so I could plan ahead.
We're going to try to do that, Representative.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on my screen, Representative Brian Sullivan.
Morning. Brian Sullivan. I live in Grantham. I'm entering my third term in the House. Spent most of it on the Labor Committee. I started briefly on the Judiciary Committee, but was then moved to Labor, which I think fits my background. I spent 25 years working with the National Education Association as a labor rep. I would say that there's no particular day that's bad. I think traditionally we've had Mondays and Fridays to attend to things back home. So if we can avoid Mondays and Fridays, I think that would, I mean, if I make an appointment, I usually try to make it on a Monday or Friday, but I'll be flexible. I'll play nice. So good to be here.
Thank you. Representative Mike Cahill.
Good morning, all. This is my 5th term in the House and on Labor. If those who are not tired of hearing this, this is the best committee. And to those who have been on other committees, well, you're going to love it here. It's a good group, and we work on interesting issues. As far as the scheduling, I will concur with Leader Sullivan in that Mondays and Fridays are traditionally off for appointments and things, but we're flexible. But Tuesdays and Thursdays are kind of equal for me. So just I'll go with the flow. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike. Representative Tim Susi.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Tim Susi, I serve Concord. This is my 6th term in the House. I served 3 terms in Nashua, and this is my 3rd term in Concord. I've been on the Transportation Committee for my first 4 terms, and I served as the Vice Chair of Labor the last 2 years, and looking forward to this session. So I'm retired. I'm a retired firefighter after 29 years with the City of Nashua. So for me, any day really works. So I'll go with the flow also. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Greg Ho.
I'm working on it.
We can hear you.
Remuted yourself.
All set.
Okay. Seems to have a mind of its own today. Thank you. First off, I'd like to just say my name is Huff. And I'm from Laconia. I'm 54 years old. This is my first term. So I'll be looking to all of you to kind of point the way for me. I've been a real estate broker. I've been a school teacher, and I've also been involved in the family business for 15 plus years. So I'm ready to go, looking forward to it. And as far as availability, as everybody here is basically said, the more notification I get, the easier it is for me to do. So if you can plan out 2 weeks, that'd be great.
I apologize for the poor pronunciation, Greg. And yes, I do plan to be 2 or 3 weeks out on this, so everyone can has time to make their schedules. Next on my screen, Representative Donald Bouchard.
I am a retired physical science teacher, and this is my second term, all serving on the labor board. And the labor board was my first choice because I was also a negotiator for teacher organizations throughout my whole career. And I am pretty flexible because I'm retired. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Bouchard. Next, Representative Jonathan Mack.
Second term, I'm representing Belknap 2, which is Meredith and Guilford. I myself reside in Meredith. I was last term and definitely enjoyed being on Labor Committee, asked to be on Labor Committee. As far as meeting days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are best for me. I, like everyone else, kind of plan to do other things on Monday, Friday when possible, flexible. If it becomes necessary to meet on those days.
Thank you. Representative Josh, I don't want to hurt your name like I did with Greg, so would you?
Yeah, it's hi everybody. My name is Josh Adjutant, second term rep from Southern Grafton County in the Lakes region. First term on the Labor Committee, pretty excited about that. My best days are like the Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I've got that pretty segregated off for work. So any time within there works for me. The Thursday schedule works fine for now.
Thank you, Representative Adjutant. Thank you. I'll try to get that to memory. I apologize. Next on my screen, Vice Chairman Representative Seaward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I live in the town of Pembroke, and I represent the district that includes Pembroke and Chichester. This is my fifth term representing that district. And although my first year in the House, I was put on labor, not my first choice, I eagerly signed up to be put back on labor for all 5 of those terms. It is an excellent committee to be on, and I'm so happy to see so many other familiar faces returning to the committee. I have been clerk for 2 of those terms and looking forward to serving as your vice chairman. As far as days go, Tuesday and Thursday are probably about equal as my best days. Monday would be my worst, but I'll certainly do my best to accommodate whatever the difficulties of scheduling require. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Jan Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, Jan Schmidt from Ward 1 in Nashua. I'm retired, so that any day that you pick is fine with me. I'm also an alderman in the city of Nashua, which gives me an interesting perspective to what the city does with the state and vice versa. And welcome back, Will. It's good to see you.
Thank you very much. Representative Len Turcott.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'd like to say it is good to be back. I represent the town of Barrington down here, just a stone's throw from the seacoast. This will be my 3rd term on labor. I was in the House for 2 terms, and then last term I did not run, but I have returned. I do like the Labor Committee. I have a little bit of a labor background. I spent about 8 to 9 years doing union work for the Allied Pilots Association. When I was there, I was a base union rep of about 550 pilots in Boston. I also was a negotiator there for many, many years, as well as a board of director. I am still currently actually doing 2 jobs. This will be my 3rd one now. I'm in my 37th year as a pilot for American Airlines. And I also am a investment and wealth advisor. For me, Wednesdays and Thursdays are the best days, Will. I tend to schedule my flying on the weekend so I can have the house open during the week, but Wednesdays and Thursdays for me. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Andrew Prout.
My name is Andrew Proud. I live in Hudson and represent the towns of Hudson and Pelham. It's my third term in the House, my first term on the Labor Committee. For work, I work full-time in doing computer security. And as far as what days of the week, Mondays are my worst day. Tuesdays are a little hit or miss, but the rest of the week's fine.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Mark Warden.
Hello, everybody. I am in Manchester, and my day job is a real estate broker. And I am starting my fourth term in the House, but the first one on Labor Committee. Any day of the week is fine for me, Will.
Thank you. Representative Warden decided to join us from the Commerce Committee, where he has 50 or 70 bills a year to our reasonably 16. So thank you for joining us. I do not see a video anymore, but is Representative Linda D. Silvestro still with us?
Yes, I will. Linda D. Silvestro, Ward 2 in Manchester. I have been on labor my entire committee time, 5 years. I'm a realtor, so Tuesday and Thursday is fine, Will, for me. I'll make it work the best I can.
Thank you. Do we have Representative Lino Avellini with us?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's my fourth term on labor. It's been a great committee. You were my first chairman, and I'm glad to see you back. I own a small business in Wakefield. I represent Carroll 5. And Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday always work good. I put on extra staff to allow me to attend House sessions and committees. So thank you, everyone. And I'm glad to see some familiar faces back. Always look forward to our committee meetings. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Is Representative Dan Toomey with us? Representative John Callum? Representative Herschel Nunez? And Representative Stephen Boyd? All right, I think I appreciate that. Thank you, everybody. I'd like to open it up to any specific questions that you might have that I didn't cover at first, and then shortly thereafter, we will have the folks from the Department of Employment Securities join us. So are there any general overall questions about how we're going to proceed?
Hey, Will, has House leadership decided which day of the week is going to be for session days?
You know, I have not heard anything, but as I said earlier, I've been kind of out of commission the last 3 days. Representative Turcott, have you found out any information of what is the plan of the House leadership at this point?
As of right now, there is no specific day for House sessions. That has not been determined yet. I think they're going to be, my gut tells me it's not going to be any specific day of the week. It's going to be almost as needed basis, but not decided yet.
You know, one of the things that we were asked to do, if any, they've asked all the chairmen if there's certain bills that are very involved, that usually require a considerable amount of conversation, possibly subcommittee work, to postpone those till next year. Because there's just so much we can do. Just the problems with some of this, that we're doing a pretty good job as many Zoom meetings go. But when it's not just the committee and we have people testifying, we have questions going back and forth, and technical problems, things could go relatively slow. You know, I was going to hold one hearing that I knew it's probably going to pass unanimously with not any issues, and one of our first ones out, and I was going to, say 15 or 20 minutes, but it could take 15 or 20 minutes to get going. So that's, one thing that I learned from today, that I'm going to have to schedule a little more time. I don't see any of those in our committee, but that we want to retain. But we're going to do the best we can. And I don't know. I talked to Representative Hunt in Commerce, and they're not going to be able to have their subcommittee, so they're trying to break things up a little differently. Representative Sullivan and I talked about some of the same bills. bills being of the same type, of putting those all in one day and having those heard together. So, I'm really hoping that this week, by tomorrow, there will be much more clarity to how some of the procedures are going to go, because right now I can't tell Brian or Jonathan how we're going to go ahead with our first hearings next Thursday. How are we going to notice people in? Are we going to have these pink cards? Does the clerk have to keep these? Do we have to physically do one ourselves by listening to these people? How is this going to work? And I just don't know yet. I really don't. Any other questions, Representative Sullivan?
Thank you. I went through the LSRs and found about 9, additional bills, House bills, that I don't believe have been printed yet. Is it your impression that 16 is all we will have?
I was told by the clerk's office that the 16 that are given to the House Labor Committee right now, as outlined online, are the only ones we will be getting.
Wow.
Well,
Yes, Representative. Yes, Linda.
did I understand you correctly? You were going to be at the LOB during the hearings?
It is my intent to be at the LOB. Yes, I figured at least someone should be there. All of you or none of you, it's your choice what you want to do. I have been told, but I have not seen. I have not gone there to see how the meeting rooms are going to be set up, how the hearing rooms are going to be set up, how there's going to be plastic between where people would sit 6 to 8, 10 feet apart. These filtration machines, I have not seen them yet. I felt I would go the first day to see how it is, to at least have one representative be there. I know at least one other individual has told me they would like to be there as well, but it's not, by any means, it's not mandatory. I was hoping to just be able to be there and give you folks a feel as to what it's like, in case you were indecisive of whether you wanted to join or not.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Cahill.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. If lobbyists or citizens want to send the committee documents, what's the best path to do that? Would it be just the committee address or through HCS?
Mr. Chairman, I believe that the leadership was talking about using the committee email as the best way to send information like that.
Thank you.
My druthers, I'd like some of the stuff to go through the chairman so I can make sure it can, and then gets to the clerk, so it's in the record, and then it gets out to everybody, whether Brian or I or John can get it out to everybody, or it gets to everybody. At least if it goes through at least the chairman as well as everybody else, that would probably be the best way for all of us. I don't want to put a lot more on legislative services at this point. I haven't even spoken to Heather yet, which I'll be doing after this meeting to see how what information they've given her as to how she wants. How do we physically sign off? Remember how we got to sign off on these things, right? We got to sign off on the blurbs. We have to sign off on some of these things. So how they're going to want us to do that, whether it's going to be electronically set up with DocuSign, I just don't know. I don't see any other hands.
If I could, Representative Infantine, would you be able to maybe designate a tech person so that we do have a training Thursday morning for anyone willing to operate some of the Zoom controls moving forward.
Oh, you're going, I didn't know you, okay. That's news to me, I apologize. So we can explain what you're looking for someone to do, please.
Yes, absolutely. Because we have limited licenses and the researchers have at least 5 committees, we may or may not be constantly in if they're scheduled at the same time. So we're looking for someone that is comfortable and technologically savvy enough to work with the controls, and we'll show them how to promote people if we're doing a public hearing and someone needs to be moved up from the attendees to be able to do that. It looks like Representative Turcotte says absolutely not. But we're just looking for someone who's willing to be trained in that capacity, just to make sure that we have someone willing to go ahead and do that moving forward.
I will do that, but I'd love to have a backup because I'm only semi-technologically advanced. So any committee member can feel free to email me or I'll make sure that some of the folks that I have not contacted personally by phone, I will make sure I do that and provide you with my cell phone number. So anyone who feel free to contact me with that at any time. And then you can let me know whether or not you feel comfortable with wanting to take this on as well. So thank you, Christina. I will join Thursday to do some training, but hopefully we can get someone else as well. Okay. Anything else?
Will, did the House leadership, or I know Christina just mentioned the tech person, have they offered you the opportunity to come in and look at the rooms in advance? I know that we were talking about that yesterday, and I wasn't sure if they'd sent that notice out to you yet.
I've yet to see it.
Okay. They should be offering that ability for you to come in and check out the room, see how it is and all that. So if they haven't, you should get that.
Thank you. Well, if there's anything else, I'd like to see if Assistant Commissioner Lavers from the Employment Securities is on the line with us, as well as Commissioner Popatis. I don't see them on my screen, but it doesn't mean they're not there. Oh, they're screen 2. Oh, nice job, Will. Let's see. I see your nice, pretty picture, Commissioner Lavers. There you are.
The pretty picture wasn't of me. You were referring to the nice lake and mountains. Yeah.
I know many of you have been on. There's only a few new folks. I didn't want to go into this too much in length because over the years, some of you remember we would spend a half a day or a day over the Department of Labor and over the Department of Employment Securities. Obviously, we're not able to do that. There's a lot of stuff going on, obviously, because of COVID. So, anything you want in excess of 15 or 20 minutes that we're going to be, or half an hour, we're going to be doing with the 2 departments, please let us know. We will, Commissioner, are we going to have the, more often than not, we are given a set of books and pamphlets from the department. Would we be expecting to get that as well this year for some of our members with the new laws and things?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we could provide you as many copies that you need of the law and rule book, the updated law and rule book, and together with some additional information on department programs, similar information that's been provided in the past. We haven't sent anything over yet. We wanted to obviously review that with you to see what the best way of delivering that. We can send it out individually to members at addresses that you provide, or if you want to default to the addresses that are available on the House page. We can do that from our mailroom over here, make it easier on you. I know you guys got plenty on your plate as you try to get everything ready for hearings. So we can chat afterwards and we can decide what the best way to do that is.
That'll be fine. I will let you know. But other than that, the floor is yours.
Okay, and I know Commissioner Kapatis is on here as well. Do you see him to be able to promote him to?
Did you send him your invite?
Yeah,
you did, because there's 2 of you, and I wanted to make sure that was him. I'll bring him on, and then I'll change his name.
Now I can see Commissioner Kapatis. And George, you're muted right now. There you go.
He's a better looking Rich Lavers than I am.
Yeah, we'll both be Rich Lavers today. That'll be great.
Well, anyways, thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members for inviting us to meet with you today. As you indicated, Deputy Commissioner Lavers is on as well. Deputy Commissioner Lavers is going to talk about claim volume, trust fund balance, things like that. So what I thought we'd start off with is the three bureaus that we have. Our Employment Services Bureau, which is what I'll start with. So prior pandemic, we used to be able to do job fairs throughout the state. We had somewhere between 25 and 30 job fairs. We'd have some places, especially the southern tier, we would have a significant number of job seekers that would show up there. You know, at some of the facilities, we'd have 800 people. Since that time, we've sort of had to go back and pivot and try to figure out, okay, how are we going to produce job opportunities for those seeking jobs and to work with employers who are looking for job seekers. And so we came up with the virtual job fairs, which we've been doing, and we have done 11 of those virtual job fairs so far. We've had 306 employers attending and 1,077 job seekers. We've gotten significant good response from both the employers as well as the job seekers. We've partnered as well with the Tech Alliance, as well as Business and Economic Affairs. Business and Economic Affairs has been a terrific partner. They've been assisting us finding employers to participate in these job fairs. And then we've done a lot of social media outreach in order to reach job seekers, as well as email blasts to job seekers, as well as notifications on our website in order to get these folks to register for those job fairs. Our next job fair is scheduled for Thursday, January 28th from 11 to 1 p.m. We already have 32 employers scheduled for that. And we have been doing these job fairs in virtually all industries. The past 4 job fairs we've done specifically in the healthcare field because, as you know, there's a significant need out there in the healthcare community for additional workers. The job portal that we have on our website, that has over 400 employers registered, along with over 2,000 jobs. And job seekers can look by region, they can look by town, occupation, and whether or not they're looking for full or part-time employment. We're working significantly with our veteran community. We're doing outreach for our veterans. We're working with the Adjutant General on assisting veterans trying to get back to work. They are obviously the number one priority of employment security, and we've done a significant amount of work with them. We're also working on the reentry program. We have staff that are working with the House of Corrections in all the different counties in order to prepare these folks for reentry into the community. We're doing workshops with them out in the House of Corrections and providing them with assistance in order to get back into the work field. We also have the Job Training Fund, which has been in existence for a significant amount of time. That's been transferred over to us from the EEA. So we offer job training assistance and the Job Training Fund to employers that are seeking to upgrade the skills of their current employees, as well as the Work Ready program, which offers soft skills that's offered through the community college, and that all works through the Job Training Fund. Our Unemployment Compensation Bureau, the contribution section is responsible for collection of employer taxes, which maintain the trust fund, and they register new employers, as well as collect current and delinquent taxes. Our payout of all eligible unemployment claims, all those folks that are eligible for unemployment claims are paid out through our trust fund, as well as through the programs that were enacted by the feds through the CARES Act. And they have, so far today, we've paid out in claims between the state UI fund, as well as the CARES Act and all the other programs, $1.557 billion since the middle of March, which is which exceeds the past 10 years of what we've paid out in unemployment benefits. The Economic Labor Market Bureau provides labor market info and measurements of labor market outcomes to assist local, private employers, educators, and the public in making decisions which promote economic development, and as well as the efficient use of state labor resources. ELMI is a resource for employment statistics. They release the UI rate on a monthly basis through the Bureau of Labor Statistics, as well as demographics and economic and labor market info in New Hampshire. The Economic Labor Market Bureau also provides a great deal of assistance to BEA when BEA has companies that are looking to move into the New Hampshire area from other states. They get all of their statistical information from, most of the statistical information from us prior to those companies moving into the state, and we provide as much information as possible to them. With that, I'll let Rich take over from there to talk a little bit about claim volume.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Can everyone hear me okay? Is that good? All right, what I'm gonna try to do here, I'm gonna share my screen just to show the members of the committee if you haven't seen some of the new microsites that we've stood up during the pandemic that the commissioner was talking about. You can see how those sites look and feel and how they function. So I'll do that, and then I'll need to stop my share at that point and then restart it to show you a brief PowerPoint going over some pandemic numbers. So, and then obviously Commissioner Kapatis and I would, happy to stick around and answer any and all questions. So let me get started here. Okay, everyone should be seeing the NHES website. This is our old website, the website that existed pre-pandemic, it is an older website that has it's a difficult site to navigate on, and we immediately encountered problems at the beginning of the pandemic and realized we needed to change quickly how we're going to be communicating with the large segment of the public that was utilizing our services. What we have done and what we will be continuing to do is we launched a new microsite for all information related to unemployment. Here it is, you can see it's available at unemploymentbenefits.nh.gov. And this is where we've been providing information, not only for individuals looking to go in, file their claim, to learn the process for filing a claim, but this is where we've been promoting all of our information on the jobs portal, the virtual job fairs, as the commissioner was talking about. And this is what we've been using for all of the the fast changing information that we had over these last few weeks with the federal extension, on again, off again. That was tough to communicate with the public, and there are a lot of people that had questions. We were able to use this site. It was kind of it was George and my personal blog, it seemed like, for those days as we were trying to get the most accurate information up to the public. So this site was launched in the early part of the pandemic. And again, this is where we've linked the jobs portal that you can see here. So this is the site that the commissioner was talking about, where an individual is able to go in. They can search by region. So here are our regions that you could search by. You can search by community. So this is all of our communities. And you can search by occupational type. So the narrower that you have your search, the fewer results, the broader, the higher the number of results that you're going to see. What an individual sees is that I'll just grab Exeter for an example, and I'll search there. So we have, with just using Exeter as our filter, you have 42 jobs that come up. Here are the employers, along with whether or not the positions are full or part-time. For instance, this position with Vapotherm, they are a medical device manufacturer with respiratory technology over in Exeter. We've worked with them closely throughout the pandemic, helping to fill their growing needs. Someone coming in and interested in Vapotherm, they would then click, see this description of Vapotherm. They would then be able to fill out some simple information, confirm that they are not a bot, and then they'd be able to fire that off to the hiring manager at Vapotherm, and then that individual can then look at the information, decide if they want to keep that conversation going. So that's what we've made available to, as the commissioner said, about 400 employers. Originally, that started as a service for the long-term care industry because of their desperate workforce needs at the beginning of the pandemic. And then we quickly grew it to manufacturing and education. We have school districts that are on there looking to fill positions with their needs during the pandemic as well. So it's available across industries and across all regions of the state. Our virtual job fairs that the commissioner was talking about, if the link would work. Oh, here we go. This is our event that we have scheduled right now. We just completed those 4 healthcare virtual job fairs the commissioner was talking about. This event on the 28th, as you can see, provides a quick description, and then both job seekers and employers are able to register right on the site. And then what they are then provided is, as we get closer to the date, they get information on the platform that we use. It's called Remo, R-E-M-O. I can't go there right now because it will want to use my camera and microphone, and that will not play issly with Zoom. So it's a site that you can check out at remo.co. You can do a quick tutorial. It's something we were introduced to by the New Hampshire Tech Alliance, and that's what we've used for all of the 11 job fairs that we've conducted. So as you can see, it's a good vehicle for communicating out information. We try to communicate as much about searching for work and the tools that we have available. Later on this week, we'll be putting up quite a bit of information on 1099 forms that will be going out for the 165,000 people that received benefits during 2020. So again, a great way to communicate with them, and hopefully it avoids people having to call into the hotline, which we continue to have available as well. So I'll stop that share, and I'll restart that so we can see the slides that we have. All right. And there we go. It's not going to let me start home. Oops. All right. So I'll skip some slides here, and I'll go down to getting into the nuts and bolts of what we've been experiencing, so folks can start to see what we've been doing and ask some questions. And I'll make this available to you, Mr. Chairman, so you can distribute out to all of the members as well. This first slide gives you a picture of what we were experiencing prior to the pandemic. And when I say prior, I mean immediately prior. For the week ending March 14th, so this is the week prior to the increase in claims, Employment Security had just under 4,000 weekly claims filed. Now you fast forward to the beginning of May, at the height of the pandemic, we had close to 117,000 claims filed during that week. This is all programs, both federal and state. And we then fast forward to the right-hand side of this chart, where you see that for week ending January 2nd, we have now dropped to a little over 45,000 claims. We have, as you'll see in some other slides, and you might have heard and read from some of the weekly publications that we put out, or our new ELMI director in his conversations, Brian Gottlob. Claims have really, they've stagnated in November, December, and now we're starting to see a gradual increase each week of 3 to 5% is what we've been seeing. So it reinforces the importance of providing opportunities for people to be able to connect with hiring employers. So we've continued to try to highlight that. But Certainly, it's different than the trend of what we were seeing earlier, say in late summer and early fall, when we were steadily declining each week. Our payments that we've paid out so far, as the commissioner indicated, just over $1.5 billion in benefits paid out. This slide shows you the breakdown of the program source for those dollars. Of note, for those that remember all of our conversations on trust fund solvency, the red line represents those dollars that have come out of the New Hampshire Unemployment Compensation Trust Fund. So the largest share of dollars paid out and benefits paid out have come from the federal Pandemic Unemployment Compensation Program, or FPUC, that top line at $874 million. Those are the $600 payments that were being paid out from April through the end of July. That was created as part of the original CARES Act. When those payments stopped at the end of July, then there was a presidential memorandum issued that created a $300 a week program that paid for weeks in August and the first 2 weeks in September. That was the fourth line down, LWA. That was the Lost Wages Assistance Program that we paid out $88 million. That was federally funded, and it was administered through FEMA. New Hampshire, along with I think every other state in the country except one of the Dakotas, participated in that program. Then we look back up to our second line, PUA. This is federally paid pandemic unemployment assistance. This is the program that pays benefits to those individuals that would not have ordinarily been eligible for unemployment. So those individuals like self-employed, gig workers, or non-covered employees, along with those folks that have a COVID-related reason that's recognized in the CARES Act, that has required that they remove themselves from the labor force. They're able to file for and collect benefits through PUA, and we've paid out $287 million in the PUA program. And that pays benefits. It started as a 39-week program. That was recently extended for an additional 11 weeks. So now that's a 50-week program, and it goes until there's two different types of eligibility. The first expires on March 13th, and the second expires on April 10th. That's where they're currently set to expire. The red line here at $278 million, these are dollars that have come out of the New Hampshire Trust Fund, paid out in regular unemployment. A federal requirement, in order for someone to be paid under any of these programs, you first have to determine whether or not they are eligible for state unemployment benefits. Traditional reasons for eligibility for state unemployment are temporary and permanent layoffs. So we first look at your reason for separation. We then look at your reasons for why you're continuing to remove yourself from the labor force. And then that determines whether or not you are required to be paid by the state program or you fall into the PUA program. State unemployment benefits have continued to be available for 26 weeks. The folks that exhaust their 26 weeks of UI then go into the bottom line here for PEUC. This is started as a 13-week extension for people that exhausted their 26 weeks of UI to give them 39 weeks of eligibility, the same number of weeks that people in PUA would have. Like PUA, this has been extended with an additional 11 weeks for 50 weeks of eligibility as well. PEUC stands for Pandemic Emergency Unemployment Compensation. So this is the other CARES Act created program, federally paid, that provides benefits to UI exhaustees for the additional 24 weeks. And we've paid out $27 million in this program thus far. Looking at our rate of recovery with these next two slides gives you some perspective for how New Hampshire has been doing. This slide shows you New Hampshire with the red line, the US with the blue line, how we have been recovering compared to the country as a whole. You will notice that in the right-hand side, these two lines are getting much closer. That was not the case during the summer and fall. New Hampshire was putting people back to work at a much higher rate than the country as a whole. And what we've seen, as I had indicated, throughout November, December, and now into January, our claim volume is going back up, and you can see that the red and blue lines are getting much closer than they had previously been. Now looking at where we stand compared to all of the other states. What we see here, we've highlighted all of the New England states. New Hampshire here is the red line at 5.4%. That percentage indicates the number of people that are currently filing for unemployment benefits in all of the, not only the state program, but all of the federal programs, so PUA and PEUC. We take that number for each state, and then we compare that number against your pre-pandemic labor force. We use February of 2020 for that number. This allows us to avoid some of the distortion that has been caused and has been admitted to by the Bureau of Labor Statistics with some of the highly volatile labor force numbers that we have been seeing that are attributed to some it's really attributed to the way in which labor force questions have previously been asked. They are not very well suited for the pandemic, simply because so many people are currently allowed and considered eligible for unemployment benefits that are not actively seeking work. And that created some confusion with the way that BLS compiled that data at the beginning of the pandemic. That continues. We've decided to avoid that confusion. We just compare the current filers against pre-pandemic labor force numbers. We do that for each state. And what the takeaway from this slide is that New Hampshire is faring better than any other state in the Northeast. You see where our neighbor to the south is located on the far right-hand side of this chart, where you do not want to be. And New Hampshire is doing much better than our other Northeastern neighbors, and certainly our New England neighbors, when you look at total number of people filing as a percentage of that pre-pandemic labor force. And now looking at where our claims are located in terms of sector, here you can see that in our top part of this graph, you see hospitals, ambulatory care, and our grocery stores. These three sectors are all at 95% and above in terms of their percentage of pre-pandemic labor force that is currently working. Well, for hospitals and grocery stores, they have consistently been at the top throughout the pandemic. That was not the case for ambulatory health. These are your primary care offices. These are your physical therapists, your chiropractors, your dentists. Those folks had an initial significant impact when they were closed during the beginning part of the pandemic. But what we saw when they were able to reopen, their workforce really came back. And that you see now at 96.5%. You see here in the middle that before I get to the retail, you see our nursing and residential care facilities. That's our long-term care employers at close to 95% of pre-pandemic employment. Our retailers are below that. With there in the middle, you see our clothing retailers back to about 93% of their pre-pandemic employment. And down towards the bottom, you have our administrative and support services. So these are a lot of your office type of support occupations. that are captured in that category, significantly impacted by the amount of remote work that continues to happen here in New Hampshire and throughout the country. And then you have restaurants and lodging. Both have consistently been the most significantly impacted sector throughout the pandemic obviously because of the need to interact with people regularly as part of their operation, and with all the reluctance to go out to those types of establishments, they have been the hardest hit. So one last note on these numbers, for instance, with accommodation with our lodging sector, where you see 86.5% on the right-hand side of the screen, what that tells you is that 86.5% of their pre-pandemic labor force is back working. It does not necessarily mean that 86.5% of their pre-pandemic labor force are working within lodging. They are working, they are not collecting benefits with us, but they could, a percentage of that, which would be probably a pretty significant percentage within hospitality and within retail, while they are back working, they are likely working in another sector because of obviously with the demand for services in those, or the traditional type of demand for those services has been depressed and has been reduced because of the pandemic. Now I'll move on to talk a little bit about the last two slides here, talk about the trust fund. So what we have seen thus far is we have 18 states that have depleted their trust funds. We have not. We'll get into that. You'll see where we are forecasted to be headed. We have 21 states right now that are authorized to borrow and have been approved for amounts to borrow from the U.S. Treasury in order to pay out their weekly unemployment benefits. 18 states are actively doing that. Here in New England, Connecticut and Massachusetts are both borrowing. When we compare that against the Great Recession, you'll remember that New Hampshire did borrow during the Great Recession. We borrowed twice for a total of $120 million. We were with about 32 other states that borrowed during the Great Recession, and we're hoping to avoid that as we continue to deal with the pandemic. The bullets that you see here, I just like to draw a distinction between employer experience during the Great Recession and employer experience thus far during the pandemic. So we certainly have seen an increase in unemployment insurance tax rates. If I were to suggest anything else, I know that several of the employers on this committee would want to start throwing things at me because they've seen what their rates have done. But what I'll be able to explain here is that we've been able to avoid more significant increases that were experienced during the Great Recession that have been able to be avoided thus far. So the immediate impact of the pandemic and the increase in unemployment was the loss of the fund balance reductions. Those are statutorily created. Those are part of the solvency controls in our law that reduce an employer's effective tax rate based upon the balance in the fund. And I'll work backwards on those. So we had started the pandemic at 300 million. The fund balance reduction when the fund is at or above 300 million is that full 1.5% reduction. To put that into perspective, a new employer starts with a earned rate of 2.7%. They pay 2.7% on the first $14,000 in annual wages paid to each employee. So when you're looking at a 1.5% reduction when the fund is above 300 million, that is a significant savings to employers with that level of reduction. What the statute then requires is that when the fund falls below 300 million, that reduction goes down to 1%. And when the fund falls below 275 million, that reduction goes to 0.5%. And then lastly, when that fund balance falls below 250 million, then employers are back in neutral at their earned rate without the benefit of any fund balance reductions. So that new employer that I had mentioned, that new employer would have gone back to their earned rate of 2.7%. With the other, on the other side of the coin here, with the solvency controls and statute, are the surcharges. So the surcharges kick in when the solvency of the trust fund is determined to be in jeopardy. What happened in the last 2 calendar quarters of 2020 was that the first 0.5% surcharge kicked in with the calendar quarter, third quarter for 2020. Then that surcharge stayed on for the fourth quarter of 2020, but because of the infusion of $50 million of CARES Act flex funds, where Governor Sununu had determined that that was how the state was going to use that portion of those remaining funds. That was then deposited into the trust fund. And because of that, and because of the forecast going forward and the forecast showing that the fund will remain solvent, what that allowed the department to do, and this is the real distinction from the experience thus far in the pandemic versus the experience in the Great Recession, is that we were able to avoid the second 0.5% surcharge. Originally, that had been scheduled to go on for the fourth quarter. We were able to avoid that. And then for the first quarter, the quarter that we are in right now, we were able to remove the first surcharge. So for this current quarter, which tends to be the most expensive quarter for employers that have traditional flat employment over the year, obviously not true for some of our seasonal employers. There is not a surcharge on this first quarter, so employers are at they're back at neutral at that earned rate and what they will be paying for this first quarter. And right now, we forecast that that's where we will be at for the second, third, and fourth quarters of this year. All in all, with the infusion of the $50 million, we then look at the savings that employers were able to realize as a result of not implementing the second surcharge and then removing those surcharges for 2021. That's a savings of about $65 million for employers. And then our final bullet here, another significant area that distinguishes the pandemic compared against the Great Recession, is that one of the pieces of the original emergency order that Governor Sununu had implemented back in March, the pieces of that emergency order that get the most discussion are the expansion of eligibility. But a equally important piece of that was that the benefits that are being paid out right now are not being charged against an employer's experience rating. So those benefits are going as a direct charge to the fund. So that is another way that we are controlling tax rates for employers going forward. Likewise, our reimbursers, our nonprofits, hospitals and other nonprofits that would normally reimburse the fund for every dollar of benefits paid out to their former employees, they have not been charged either. But what is going to be done in order to avoid that impact on the trust fund, because reimbursers don't contribute to the growth of the trust fund like our for-profit employers do, the governor will be depositing an amount from the CARES Act flex funds into the trust fund to offset the impact of having allowed those nonprofits not to have to reimburse the fund as well. So collectively, those have had a significant impact on the experience of employers, but at the same time, the tax rates for employers have gone up significantly compared to what was the experience or what had become regarded as the norm of the 1.5% full fund balance reduction prior to the pandemic. And lastly, our trust fund forecast. You'll see Here we are, right now, we're just under 124 million is what is in the New Hampshire Unemployment Compensation Trust Fund account. This is what we are projected out for 2021, ending the year at about $98 million. There are a lot of assumptions that go into this forecast, and there are both good and bad impacts on the trust fund forecast that can be associated with the extension that we just experienced with the Federal CARES Act programs and any subsequent extension that we might see. The good for or positive impact that has on the trust fund is that the individuals that we have collecting unemployment benefits right now through a federal program, there's a likelihood that a lot of those individuals would also have eligibility or could have eligibility in the state unemployment program, depending on the circumstances of their separation. So if those programs hadn't been extended, there would have been a large group of those individuals that would have transitioned onto the state unemployment program, thus drawing down the balance of our fund. So that has a significant positive impact when we revised our forecast following the enactment of the Continuing Assistance Act. The negative impact that has, this will is yet to be determined, the total impact, is that the additional $300 that is provided through that extension, that $300 now goes through the middle part of March. What we saw, and some, there's quite a bit of research done on this when the $600 was in effect. That obviously has impacts on your claim filing totals when you increase the amount of benefits that every individual is able to get. That we'll be looking at to see the impact that has on the total number of people filing for benefits now with that reduced amount of $300. So both positive and negative impacts from a trust fund solvency perspective for all of the programs that were extended. So with that being said, I'll stop the share and I'll stop talking and open it up to questions that the commissioner and I will hopefully be able to answer.
Hi, Rich.
You
Len
anticipate-
Turcott, good to see you again. Excellent presentation. I love the data and the slides. I think you said you're going to make that available to us.
Yeah, I'll send it to Chairman Infantine and make sure it gets distributed out to everybody.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Commissioner Lowry, do you anticipate coming forth to our committee with any legislation having to, amend how we're doing things with unemployment security, such as years ago when we had to, refigure the amount of payroll that taxes are going to be taken on, or is that too early to determine what, if any, changes we may need?
I think, and it's a great question. I think there's certainly now is as good a time as any to have conversation around trust fund solvency. New Hampshire is not unique in that the system is funded in a way that we ask the most of employers at the time that they can least afford it, and we ask the least during times when they can most afford it. And that's how the solvency controls have been set up. I do think that it's worth having a discussion about that. And I'm sure there's going to be you'll be hearing from your constituents with businesses that are looking at their tax rates going up and wondering how can that be during a pandemic. I talked about the details of how we're controlling that and how we've controlled it better, I think, now than happened during the Great Recession. But there's certainly some discussion to be had around solvency and looking at whether or not we are currently setting those fund balance reductions at the right thresholds. Do those need to be higher? And when we started the recession, started the pandemic recession, we had been determined to have a solvent trust fund. That was an independent analysis by the U.S. Department of Labor that happened in February of 2020. But they're judging solvency based on looking at your experience over the last 20 years and what type of recessions you've experienced. They were not anticipating an impact like the pandemic. So I do think it's worthwhile to look at those solvency controls. The other topic that may come up, we're still trying to get some definitive answers from the U.S. Department of Labor, is around fraud prevention. The current section of our statute around confidentiality contains restrictions on our ability, very well-intentioned and necessary restrictions that limit the department's ability on sharing of confidential information. That obviously creates confidence in the system when people know that their claim information or an employer's tax filing information is going to be held confidential. One area that we are looking at some expansion there would be with a system that's been created by the U.S. Department of Labor that allows states to collaborate in preventing ID theft related fraud. In order to participate in that system, you do need to share your claim filing information. We are currently looking at whether or not the provisions in our statute allow participation right now, or whether or not we're going to need an amendment of that. So as we learn more, that might be a topic that we would look to possibly seek to have amended into a bill dealing with benefits in another way. But it's something we're trying to get answers on. And if we do need to make a change, we certainly will have that discussion with the committee, so you can look at what the options will be at that point.
Any other questions? Well, thank you very much. I'm sure if we do have any other questions, we will get them to you, and do our best to work as closely as we can with you through the first half of the session here.
All right, and thanks again for the opportunity today to talk with everyone, and we'll make sure we send out those slides so that all the members can have those.
Thank you, Commissioner Livers, Commissioner Pottas. Appreciate it. Nice seeing you two gentlemen, other than on television.
Chair and committee members.
All right. Thank you. And I got to see here through my pictures whether we have Mr. Ogden. Do we have by any chance Commissioner Ogden?
He is on his way over.
I mean, physically or electronically?
Electronically, there he is on the screen.
Commissioner Ogden, I'm very sorry we're running late, but appreciate it was nice speaking with you last week, and I appreciate your willingness to come on and speak with everyone. I think that you know most of the folks here that were on the committee the last 2 years. Understood that although you weren't as active on the legislative side, in the last session you plan to be much more so this year. So ladies and gentlemen, Commissioner Ogden from the Department of Labor, and it's all yours.
Thank you, Chairman. Can everyone hear me okay? Thank you. So it is good to see so many familiar faces. I've enjoyed coming to the committee in the past, and as Chairman Infantine said, my plans are to be there frequently this session. Having seen so many familiar faces, I'll keep the overview of the department fairly brief because I imagine most of you are very familiar with what we do, but I think it's always good to come with a grounding or just an overall sense of the organization. Essentially, the Department of Labor in New Hampshire is made up of 2 divisions, the first being the Workers' Compensation Division. And that actually is the bulk of our staff. I mean, the Workers' Compensation Division is responsible for regulation and administration of workers' comp in this state. There's a whole host of activities that go into that. Principally, those that you'd be most familiar with involve the fact that we work to ensure that workplace injuries are properly reported. Then we work to see that those injuries are either properly accepted or denied as claims, if they rise to the level of a claim. And to the extent that there's a dispute between the employee and the carrier or the employee and their employer about any claim, we would ultimately provide the platform for the parties to adjudicate that matter, inclusive of formal hearings. And we do about 2,000 of those hearings a year. In addition to administering or adjudicating claims, for purposes of workers' comp, we work very diligently to see that employers have workers' compensation coverage in this state. It's a requirement that everybody having even one part-time employee in this state secure workers' compensation coverage either through an insurance carrier or through self-insurance. In addition to our workers' comp division, we have the inspection division. The inspection division deals with wage and hour issues. In terms of what we deal with in wage and hour, that is 275, which is protective legislation, things such as saying that you have to be paid on time and in full. Protective legislation also deals with such concept as notification or documentation, those things underpinning a workplace in which employees are and employers are protected. In addition to protective legislation, workers inspection division enforces minimum wage law, RSA 279. Notably, and I have seen there are many bills dealing with minimum wage, or a couple of bills dealing with minimum wage this session already. New Hampshire doesn't have a minimum wage per se. Effectively, what we do in New Hampshire per 279 is we track to the federal minimum wage. So again, one thing to consider as we see those bills dealing or detailing new minimum wage ideas is that presently we track to the federal standard. In addition to protective legislation and minimum wage, we also deal with youth labor under RSA 276A. Essentially, in New Hampshire, there are certain provisions put in place to protect youth labor. The intent of those is to say that, during certain periods, specifically when youth, anyone under 18 is in school, they should only be working so many hours in a given week, and things of that nature. Additionally, the inspection division provides safety enforcement. We do not handle safety for private employers other than in limited circumstances, which I'll touch upon. Our primary safety interest or our safety focus is dealing on workplace safety for public and municipal employers. For private employers, our safety is really centered on the idea that any employer of 15 or more individuals should be doing certain things, such as having a joint loss management committee in effect and also having a safety summary plan. Lastly, in terms of the activities of the inspection division, is we regulate and enforce boiler and elevator protections. Those are within RSA 157A and 157B. In terms of talking about, I think that Employment Security did a wonderful job in touching upon what they've experienced through COVID. Not having anything to do with unemployment. We've not had the experiences that they've had, but we have had certain things come up in COVID or specific to COVID. Namely, if you're going by division in workers' compensation, early on, a number of questions were coming to us dealing with this idea of, is COVID compensable under workers' comp? The answer is it is. And then in terms of, well, is it just an automatic? The answer there is it's not. So specifically, individuals who were able to say that they contracted COVID and had certain either indemnity costs or medical costs associated with COVID could be brought as a claim, but they would ultimately have to demonstrate that the COVID came out of their course of the employment, which is not always an easy thing to show. By its very nature, a pandemic is tough to pin down exactly where and when it happened. So that's something to keep in mind. In terms of COVID claims, the last time I checked, which was about a week ago, we have received roughly 2,000 first reports of injuries denoting COVID as the injury. I would point out that a first report of injury is not necessarily an acknowledgement or acceptance of a claim, and it's also not an acknowledgement and acceptance by the employer that the injury definitively happened at work, but it is an indication that COVID happened and it possibly happened at work. So I just point out that we've seen roughly 2,000 filings indicating first report of injury as COVID. In terms of actual disputed claims, we've had under 10 hearings go forward dealing with COVID as the injury at issue. So that's a fairly low amount. I was actually somewhat surprised when I saw that. But again, I think that part of what the issue is understanding the horrible things that are associated with COVID. Absent those really horrible outcomes, if you're talking about COVID type scenarios, you're really in a context of workers' comp would be saying, was there lost time? Were there medical bills? So that's perhaps why we have not seen a number of claims that have gone to the actual point of full hearing, is we haven't seen people looking to assert that they have a long-term loss of work potential due to COVID. At least we have not seen it yet. In terms of inspection division and COVID, or in issues that have come up in the context of COVID, a couple of big things. One, as you might imagine, is this idea that in COVID, a lot of people, a lot of employers have had to change things quickly. We've seen employers that have reduced individuals' pay. We've seen employers that have reduced certain benefits or done different things in order to stay afloat. So we've had a number of issues come up where certain things happened unilaterally and without notice. And while we're sympathetic and can understand that in the fast-paced world and in these unforeseen circumstances, an employer might not always have the wherewithal to say, okay, I've documented that, I've given it advance. The law does require that if you're changing pay, if you're changing benefits, if you're changing certain essential terms of employment, you would have to give advance notice to employees. And when that's not happened, there have been issues that have come to us. I would note that throughout the pandemic, we tried to look at things and understand that us going into businesses might not be the best thing for some employers. And it might not also be the best thing for certain of our employees from a safety perspective. But throughout, we have maintained an inspection stance. Early on in COVID, a number of our inspectors actually were providing services to employment security for purposes of fraud detection. But throughout, we have maintained inspection activities, and we're continuing to do that. We're continuing to go into businesses, again, being sensitive to spacing and not trying to further disrupt businesses, but just understanding that while folks are working, they should be entitled to those protections. Additionally, in terms of issues relating to notifications or changing terms of employment, one issue that's come up, and we've spoken with the folks in hospitality quite frequently on this, is tips. As you folks who've been on this committee for some time might know, tips are always a hot button issue because the employees that receive tips, those are their wages. And there's a whole host of concerns and considerations that go into that. We've not yet seen any legislation on this, but one thing we have talked about, and again, we've talked about this with folks in the hospitality industry, is that the existing laws and regulations on tips do not necessarily work very well with these new models that have come out in terms of all online ordering, everyone doing things through an app and limited people in the building. It's been led to some issues where, the question is, who does the tip belong to? Is the employer able to take all of those tips? Is the employer able to take all of those tips and distribute them freely? Or are there certain employees in the exercise that could directly claim that the tip is theirs? So that's something that's come up. Again, we've not seen legislation on it to date. And I'll be quite honest, I don't have the answer to exactly how you would write a law that would perfectly fit present circumstance. But I just pointed out as an issue that has come up relative to COVID and wage and hour. That's what I have in terms of an overarching, very general presentation of what we do and some of the things we've encountered in COVID. Again, I do understand that most of you have dealt with us before, so I'm going on the assumption that a lot of you do have a pretty good understanding of what we do and what we're involved in. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Commissioner Ogden, one of the concerns that I have going forward is related to getting the vaccine and work. Employers putting across some things because maybe they're more concerned with the COVID than others. You can't come into the office. You can't come in unless you have a vaccine. You can't do this. You can't do these things. Are you going to be having some training sessions for employers so people don't violate the law here regarding whether you need a vaccine to come into my store or be working in my business, et cetera?
Yeah, one of the things we've been working on, it's an interesting point, and thank you for the question, Chairman Infantine. A lot of those, it's actually EEOC protections dealing with, in a general sense, in New Hampshire, an employer has the right to put in place those types of conditions. And by those types of conditions, an employer could say, you have to do this, you have to do that. Where you'd want to have some concerns is if you are in any way tripping across somebody's protected rights, in the sense of, are you discriminating against them for either a health reason, or are you discriminating against them for some other reason? I've seen certain literature out there that's heightened to the fact that some religions might have aversions to vaccines, which would lead to a protected right. But a big one would be health or things of that nature. What we are looking to do is put together some guidance for that we could offer out. I would say that employers that have asked us that question to date, we've put them in contact with folks at EEOC, and we've actually, in a general sense, said that from a basic standpoint, an employer would have the ability to place those types of conditions relative to an individual working for them. But you'd have to just, again, look at, am I in any way infringing upon someone's protected status, whether it be their particular health conditions or other things of that nature.
Thank you. Any other questions for Commissioner Ogden?
Representative Avalani has his hand up.
Representative, feel free.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Rudy. It's good to see you again. There was a question from one of my fellow business partners was, the mask mandate working in an open kitchen that has open flames, would workman's comp cover a facial burn related to that? And I asked that question of my workman's comp people, and they didn't have any information on that. So I was just wondering if people would be covered if they're under the extended mask mandate, if they're working in an open kitchen with open flame, if it happens to catch fire, would workman's comp cover that in that instance being a mandate from the government?
I would think so, certainly, and I know this answer is not always the best. It depends. You'd always look, each type of claim comes up and is looked at individually and on the facts. I would say that I could see a claim like that succeeding. When you talk about workers' comp claims, you always have to look at such things as this concept of neutral risk. Was the risk enhanced by the fact that the individual was at work or engaged in their employment? In the scenario, and this is a gross oversimplification, but in the scenario you've provided, certainly everyone's being told they have to wear masks, but not everyone is working with ovens or open flamed ovens. So again, while I'm not deciding that case right now, I would see that there is a possible claim there on the basis of, again, the fact, yes, everyone should be wearing masks or is being told they have to wear masks, but not everyone who's being told that has a job that makes them work in front of ovens. So I think that claim could go forward and might succeed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Rudy.
Thank you.
Anything else? Seeing none, thank you very much, Commissioner Ogden. We will be in touch.
Thank you so much. Let me know, as I'll echo the thoughts of Deputy Commissioner Lavers. Any questions, feel free to reach out at any time, and we'll try and get you guys responses right away. So thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I do see Representative Toomey. I hope I didn't ignore you earlier. I called your name when we were introducing ourselves. I didn't hear you. I apologize if you were there. Welcome.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So you want me to introduce myself a little bit about it?
Yes, please.
Okay, this is my third term on the Labor Committee. My first term was 1989 and 90. And then the last term was my second term, and this will be my third. I'm a retired firefighter. After retiring from the fire department, I worked for the American Federation of Teachers and covered the states of Maine and New Hampshire. And I represented all the different categories within the school environment, but I also represented nursing home employees and one police department in Bridgeton, Maine, believe it or not, all for the American Federation of Teachers. So I've finally retired, and so I'm looking forward to this coming session. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Representative Toomey. All right, folks, I don't want to keep you any longer. Anyone have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand. I'll scan real quick to see if there's any additional questions. I will be calling Heather Goalie today and setting up some things for next Thursday. I picked up some of the easier bills that should have a very limited testimony, and we'll allow for some breaks. So we're not going to go every 30 minutes, every hour. We'll allow a break in the morning for half an hour, in the afternoon, as well as a lunch break. All righty. For those of you I haven't spoken to personally by phone, I will do so remaining today and tomorrow to get in touch with you folks to let you know my personal contact information, and then you can feel free to ask me any other questions then. So if nothing else, anyone want to volunteer to be my backup for technology, let me know. And I look forward to another good year with the Labor Committee. Thank you all for wanting to be involved, and have a good day, everyone. Be well. Thank you, Christina.